back off before you get hurt.
At Heaven's command, we will kill the unwanted. We must get rid of bad trees from their roots. I hope you are not one of them.
Good night, child. It's past your bedtime.
Originality. Something we all strive for. I don't want to copy another YouTuber, because nobody wants to be a copycat. But wanting to be original and truly being original are two different things. Every time we see what we perceive as originality, it's commonly an amalgamation of a multitude of things. Today I'm going to be talking about one of the most original games I've ever played. And let me start by saying Goichi Suda, or Suda 51, is a good reason we'll probably never see marijuana legalized in Japan within our lifetime. Because the feeling this game gives you trumps that of even the strongest psychoactive drugs, such as acid, DMT, potentially even Benadryl. Of course, this is a PC review, as I've never owned a GameCube and I've heard the PS2 version is less than favorable. But playing Killer 7 on PC is easier said than done. When you first start up Killer 7, you'll have a pop-up menu where you can choose the keybinds and whether you want widescreen or not. And thank you for the widescreen capabilities, however, unless I'm not privy to some setting, I think I'm stuck at 4:3 aspect ratio. So make sure your keybinds look right and then hop in the tutorial. The tutorial, however, goes by buttons, and to my knowledge this is the only way it displays the controls, so if you're playing on keyboard and mouse like I am, then you'll have to basically go through this weird trial and error rigmarole. And if you do ever plan on playing on keyboard and mouse, I'd recommend just watching a walkthrough on the first target, just so you can get a feel for what the game entails and how you should play it. I guarantee you're not going to know what's going on, and everything will feel extremely alien to you. But I assure you it's worth it if you're into weird stuff from Japan. You play as 7 different characters that you can switch from at will via the TV in the Harmon room, from the menu, or on PC even the 1 through 7 hotkeys. When moving throughout the game, you select a direction to move forward or backwards, and whilst moving you can select the doorway, alley, or hallway or whatever you want the character to enter. I don't really know how to explain it better than it's like tank controls, but stupider. It works for some reason though, and it feels very fluid once you get used to it. By the way, despite the age of the game, the Steam version works immaculately on PC, and I didn't seem to have any issues running it. But I'm sure you guys are wondering how the shooting works. By pressing the spacebar, I'll raise my gun or guns or knife into a first-person perspective, and the game will act as an on-the-rails shooter. The enemies, known as Heaven Smiles, will meander over to you, and that time you have to shoot them, their weak point, or a combination of the two. Then once you collect the blood they drop, you can use your special attack. Once you figure that out, it's pretty good, and after that some weird stuff happens. Harmon Smith is technically the protagonist, as all the assassins in the group Killer 7 that you play in are physical manifestations of himself. As you swap the 7 different personalities, you'll find they all come with separate functions that you can only benefit from in combat and puzzles. Oh yeah, puzzles. As if my American brain can even fathom what this game is so far. Let's throw some more stuff on top of our plate. Let me just give you a basic explanation of the group of people you play as. There is the one main character, essentially, Harmon Smith. You can play as him in certain situations, but mainly you'll be playing as the Killer 7 themselves, 6 of which you can swap in between on a whim. The 7th, Garcian Smith, is basically the group leader, and when you die as one of the other assassins, you'll respawn as Garcian. Your job is to then revive the downed assassin via picking up their head wherever you as the player died. He then puts it into a briefcase, and then you respawn at the nearest save room where you can revive the assassin with blood. And bear with me, I'll get to the blood thing, just give me a second, alright? But I'll just explain the rest of the assassins real quick. Dan Smith, which might be my favorite, I like his revolver. He can charge up attacks and shoot these big beams of energy. Kaede Smith, or however you say her first name, has a scope on her gun enabling you to hit enemies from afar. Her alternate ability, which you'll use during puzzles, is, well... yeah, not much I really want to say about that right now, at least not right now. Alright, we'll get there. Alright, it's messed up. Kevin Smith is cool. He can turn invisible and throw knives. He also doesn't talk. Coyote is the athlete and can jump high places. Con Smith, which by the way is probably the funniest, has 2 Glocks he shoots sideways, and he runs super fast. Mask de Smith has 2 rocket launcher shotgun things and can break stuff with his wrestling moves. There's some other unlockable characters as well, but I'll get to that later. On to the blood thing. You use blood for everything. You first collect blood through killing enemies. You use blood to level up the various assassins' abilities through the TV in the save room. You use blood to heal, use special abilities, revive killed assassins, and you can trade blood for hints in puzzles. Which leads me to the hints in the game. There's various characters that will help you throughout the game. Iwazaru is a weird little guy. He gives you hints and talks about the story cryptically, I guess. There's Travis, the sexual ghost. Same thing, he pretty much just gives you story stuff in really cryptic ways. The carrier pigeon is important, because they actually share important info about the assassins, their abilities, and important story info. And then there's Yoon Hyun. He's an asshole. He'll give you a subtle hint by standing by a puzzle, and if you offer him blood and shoot his mask, the mask will teleport to his face, and he'll flip you off while calling you a loser for asking for help. Yes, this game punishes you for getting hints. There's also a woman named Samantha that you can speak to save your game. Unless she's wearing normal clothes. As opposed to her maid outfit, then she won't let you save the game. Yes, Japan. Now, this is the most complex story I've ever tried to cover in the history of my channel. Some things just aren't gonna make sense. Due in part to Suda not being able to cram all 50 hours of story he wanted into it, and in part to Suda deciding to leave things up to interpretation. But before I can cover any of the characters, I must speak about the Second World War. We over here in the West might know Japan for drawing Hello Kitty and shit, but they have a long history of war, and after Pearl Harbor they became enemy number 1 to the United States, which led to Franklin D. Roosevelt dropping 2 nuclear bombs on Japan in order to get them to surrender, something that can still be felt to this day. The Japanese people are persistent though, with rumors of an uproar and protests being staged after Emperor Hirohito's surrender, even after the catastrophe their country had just faced. Since then, Japan and America have been pretty chill. Suda51, however, likes to include themes of West versus East though, and I like to think this follows a timeline in which the war never truly ended. Regardless, one constant throughout the game is Japan and America are attempting to take over the entire world by any means necessary, whether that be through propaganda, murder, espionage, etc. That brings us to Harmon Smith, born Harmon Delta Head in 1750. His neighbor, a Japanese man named Kunlun, would become his best friend, but also his rival, and 10 years after meeting, Harmon's lover Susan would be killed. Kunlun would take Harmon to a villa in which he saw remnant psyches for the first time. Oh, you don't know what remnant psyches are? Remnant psyches are the ghosts you'll see throughout the game, all of which are past targets that Harmon or the Killer 7 have killed off. Sometimes right after a boss battle, you'll encounter that same boss. But there are some prior to the events of the game, such as Travis and Yoon Hyun. Now that you understand Remnant Psyches, it's time to talk about Killer 7. Harmon can basically absorb one's personality, making them a member of his team. I'm not quite sure how it all works and who's compatible with it or whatever. Like, you know, Travis is killed by them, but he's not a member of the Killer 7, you know what I mean? I don't know. So, sometimes when Harmon kills you, you're a Remnant Psyche, sometimes he absorbs you. Now it's time to talk about Amir Park Reiner, born in 1942 in Alabama. At the age of 13, Amir was attending Coburn Elementary School, a school led in secret by the government to use the voting booths to pick and choose presidents behind the scenes, in which Harmon was the principal. This came to a head when Amir killed everyone in the school, including Harmon, and defected to the United States government. Then after, he was a professional assassin. He gets tasked with taking down the Smith Syndicate at the Hotel Union.
So, you must be the one they call the Bloody Heartland. You here to kill the Smiths, is that it? Rule of thumb, don't set your goals too high. What do you want? Who do you want, huh?
You.
The Smith Syndicate, led by Harmon and Dan Smith, were single-handedly taken down by Amir. And yes, Harmon dies. Harmon dies a million times in this game. He's immortal, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, after killing all the members of the Smith Syndicate, Amir goes crazy due to the guilt and ends his own life. Harmon absorbs Amir's persona, transforms him into Garcian Smith, the main dominant persona for the other members of the Smith Syndicate, or Killer 7 if you will. Years later, Kunlun created the Heaven Smile organization. The Heaven Smiles are not seen by the human eye and blow up when they touch you. They're basically suicide bombers. Killer 7 starts with Garcian attempting to take down the Heaven Smile organization, as they are taking out high-profile targets and blowing up stuff, starting all the way back in 2003. And before I continue, I just want everybody to know that it's taken quite a bit of research and over 50 hours of gameplay to lay out this story even this much. It's not easily revealed. In the 1970s, Curtis Blackburn is working for Dan Smith at the Seattle Self-Defense Department, where Curtis acts as a mentor to Dan, before Pedro Montana sells him out and tells him Dan's betrayed him. So Curtis kills him. Sometime then after, he is tasked with creating the Heaven Smiles via harvesting organs from children. He even owns a theme park to lead children to. This is a major target for the Killer 7 around the end of the game, and Dan, now being in the Killer 7 obviously, travels to his house, and they have a little gun battle.
Danny boy, look at you. You've changed considerably. Into a badass, if I may.
Yeah, and you've changed a lot too. Into an old man. I went to see the devil. Now it's your turn.
Anyways, the game ends with Garcian basically relearning his past as Amir through going back to the Hotel Union multiple times on his own, and going back to the original Coburn Elementary School. And in one of two endings, one in which Japan is destroyed and one in which the United States is destroyed, well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Harmon and Kunlun just have a battle 100 years later. I don't know. That's how it ends. Either the United States or Japan gets destroyed, and then that's it. Now, that's the simplest way I could put it, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. Now it's time to get into the themes.
I'm General Lynch from the United States Emergency Countermeasure Defense Department. I want to thank you for cooperating in the capture of Mr. Ulmeda. As you may know, this city is run by the military. This city remains a vital instrument for determining our country's safety standards. So I ask you, forget what you witnessed here today.
General, beginning countdown, sir.
Aim!
On your mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark!
Now, we know weird things tend to come from Japan, whether it be culture shock or just the way they use these abstract concepts. But being abstract for abstract's sake isn't always good. One way a game strays from the status quo is Cruelty Squad. It's a wild game for sure, but it knows it's ridiculous. However, Killer 7 for the most part takes itself really seriously. Its use of abstract storytelling is interesting. As we proceed throughout the game, what we don't know is what we can fantasize about and try to put all the pieces together one by one. Obviously, what's been happening throughout the events in the game is way bigger than us, and to expect to put it all together in one linear timeline isn't reasonable. It actually kind of reminds me of playing Metal Gear Solid for the first time.
Major, what are you doing here? I've been waiting for you in my room. Who are you?
The only difference with that was that it had multiple releases before and after that finally painted a somewhat comprehensive story. Killer 7, however, unfortunately did not, except for the fact his characters would share a universe with Suda's other franchise, No More Heroes, with Dan Smith and Amir Park Reiner making small cameos. A big theme in this game, I think, is being too late. A few times the target you're set to eliminate will be assassinated by some alternative force. And one of the most powerful scenes in the game is after Dan Smith eliminates Curtis.
Pretty funny.
You got quite a hobby here, old man.
Doesn't hurt to have a hobby after retirement. What do you think?
What do I think? I think what you got here is no different than what those guys do at immigration.
All I ever wanted was to shed light on my life.
You have no idea. You're nothing but a sick maniac.
Guess it's time to close the curtains.
Trying to die in style? Give me a break, you sick old man.
Before leaving, he looks at all the bodies Curtis has collected in the meantime. You couldn't stop Curtis from ruining countless lives, just like you can't stop the things Kunlun and Harmon are setting up in the background. And to add to that, Killer 7 as an organization is never painted to be the good guys. It's Japan and America committing acts of violence against each other, but there is no virtuous side. At the end of the day, you're just a pawn, and that's what the ending to this game really tries to portray. Of course, I want to discuss the ending a bit more and give my personal thoughts on it.
I'm the man you saw in your path. Do you remember the incident where 6 people were murdered in this hotel? You must have seen it yourself. Because you were the killer. The assassin, Amir Parkreiner, was the ace of aces. Who would have thought the killer was a mere 13-year-old? It was a deliberate crime targeted toward the Smith Alliance. It consisted of 7 members, but the leader wasn't included in the 7. Later investigations found his dead body inside a safe of a school. The investigative unit called them the Killer 7. But the whole affair was never made public, not because this was an aberration from society, but because it involved national security issues. Unfortunately, a curse brought upon you by old traditions. You, Amir, are an assassin controlled by the government. Someone is watching your every move. From the second when I first took you in on the roof. You are one of the very few assassins with class, but you were out of control.
After Garcian realizes he's Amir Parkreiner and that he killed all the members of Killer 7 years ago, he opens up his trademark briefcase that we see him carry throughout the game and reveal all of the Killer 7's weapons. Which is supposed to be some huge reveal, although I kind of started seeing that coming the more the game alluded to Amir Parkreiner being such a pivotal character. I don't think Garcian is schizophrenic or anything either. I do believe this personality switching thing is real, and of course Garcian is the host. But I think when we switch from Garcian to, say, Dan or Kaede, we're actually playing as Dan or Kaede. It's similar to how Harmon absorbs Amir for him to become Garcian. They are the same person, but they're two different personalities, if that makes sense. Anyways, I'd recommend paying the $7 or whatever for the game on Steam and